to everybody. I'd like to bring Cynthia in here, but this has kind of given us a good sense of the problem. And I'd like to ask, have you seen anything that universities have done right? And the reason I ask this is because there's a tension between universities sort of being these places of open idea, or at least in theory, these arenas for the exchange of open ideas. And at the same time, universities, because of their openness, are institutionally left vulnerable to misuse by authoritarian governments and their influence. So I'm kind of wondering, how has the university managed to do anything right in this regard? Or are they just kind of unresponsive, or do they seem to be co-opted by the Chinese government in this case? Has the Office of International Student Affairs done anything? I'd like to open that up to the three of you. Include Cynthia in.
Just briefly on that point, and this might be a low bar, but there are at least 45 universities around the United States that have allowed the Falun Gong Club to be established, or for meditation events, different campus events, and documentary screenings, right, to be held. And like I said before, that's a very low bar. That's a right that every single student in any college in America should have. There was another case in New York where the Falun Gong Club had met with a lot of this reprisal, and they were worried about physical attacks. And so they actually contacted the campus police, and there was security put into place before the event began. So these are two things that I wanted to bring up real quick.
I have one that is sort of discussed in the film, In the Name of Confucius. So it's about Confucius Institutes. So the sort of controversy over Confucius Institutes sort of started when this one student, from mainland China, she had signed a contract with Confucius Institutes, and then she was working at her university in Canada. I think it was McMaster University. So I believe they are the only university to close down a Confucius Institute because of discriminatory hiring practices. So because in the contract that she signed, it specifically said, you cannot be a Falun Gong practitioner and work at Confucius Institute. So basically exporting that discrimination outside of China into Canada, not allowing Falun Gong practitioners to be hired. And from what I have read, that is the only university to ever cite that as the prime example of the prime reason why they closed down the Confucius Institutes. Tufts University, when they closed theirs, it was sort of this, our 2-year contract is up, we have decided to go different directions. Most universities are not stating this as the reason why they're closing the Confucius Institute. So that's, in my opinion, like one of the best examples of something a university can do. Directly cite the problem. Don't beat around the bush and not point out this problem. But from what I understand, McMaster University is the only one to actually specifically say that. Most universities are just like, we've decided to go different directions. We're not going to have the Confucius Institute anymore. They're not citing the reason why, these discriminatory hiring practices and the transnational repression of dissident voices outside of China.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I would like to echo something that Emily said earlier about the importance of solidarity. I think in general, as we've all acknowledged, there's a sort of a lack of understanding and awareness among universities when it comes to the scope of transnational oppression. So when a high-profile incident occurs or a report emerges of this harassment, administrators often fail to kind of adequately speak out in support of affected parties. However, there was one instance that I would like to highlight as a more positive response to this issue, and something that we would like to see more of. Following the publication of a ProPublica article in December 2021 on the threats faced by students from the PRC, Purdue University's president's office released a statement to condemn this targeting of one of his universities, of one Purdue student's targeting that was mentioned in this report, or in this piece. The president made it clear that, quote, any such intimidation is unacceptable and unwelcome on our campus, end quote. while it's always preferable, as Emily pointed out, for universities to have more proactive responses and to establish some sort of response mechanism before an incident occurs, I do think that these types of firm statements in support of international students' rights and safety may make these students feel less alone. I do think the solidarity in general is very important.
So